is Wafa Al-Abedat. You are listening to the Woman Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Woman Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Woman Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Side note, even though we are all at home, we wanted to bring you valuable content. So this episode of the podcast is brought to you over Zoom. Please bear with the sound quality. Thank you. Alya Mooro is an Egyptian-born, London-raised journalist and author of the best-selling non-fiction book, The Greater Freedom: Life as a Middle Eastern Woman Outside the Stereotypes. She has been published in the Telegraph, Refinery 29, The Washington Post, and has always provided unique takes on social commentary, identity, and culture. She recently launched The Greater Conversation, a weekly newsletter which centers female Middle Eastern stories with an aim to destigmatise through honest storytelling and conversation. Welcome, Alya. First, I want to talk to you about, I kind of know how you're feeling, but how are you doing with COVID and just generally, how have you been feeling? Where is your mind at?
I think it's a weird one. There's been a lot of different emotions over the past couple of months, which literally feel like they've been a couple of centuries. But it was, a weird one because I was in LA just before this was happening and I was supposed to actually still be in LA or have just come back from LA. So, even that kind of having to just quickly book a flight and run back to London before getting, with the fear of that I might get stuck in LA kind of heightened, I think, the sort of anxiety at the beginning for me because I was just so far away from my family and from everyone while it was all happening. And then I've had a lot of different emotions. So at the beginning, I was very panicked and just crying and just feeling really anxious and very much how am I going to do work? How am I going to do anything? I didn't have any sort of drive, like a lot of people, I think. And obviously I'm lucky that I'm still able to work. Obviously a lot of people have lost their jobs and been furloughed and stuff. So that's obviously, I work from home anyways kind of thing. So it was more just the mental kind of presence was not there. And then as I kind of do, I've realized that my coping mechanism is very much working. So I've basically just completely piled my plate. And all the things that I had thought, maybe one day I'll do, Nasriya Talla and I, a friend of mine, we've been talking about starting a podcast for ages. And then we thought, let's just buy mics and just do it at home. Khalas, what are we waiting for? So I think that it was that with a lot of things. So now I'm really busy. Obviously, alhamdulillah, I'm very lucky, but I'm almost what have I done? Why have I done this to myself? So yeah, it's just finding the balance.
Have you had a bad day even during those very, routinal days? And how have you managed to turn it around into a good day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that funnily enough, while I'm in the sort of midst of my routine, not so much because I'm quite regimented with myself in terms of I set 40-minute alarms throughout my whole day. I do loads of stuff like that. So in my working days, I'm fine. I think what I found difficult because I'm self-isolating alone. So it's a whole other experience. I'm literally just by myself. So I found that the weekends were a lot more difficult for me because I wanted to sort of not be working to sort of have that break, obviously. But then I'd be oh my God, so what happens now? And there was one day, and I actually ended up posting about it on Instagram and then deleting it because I was just you're a dick. But I basically went to the park and I was just, again, by myself, going for a walk. And disclaimer, generally, I really enjoy my own company and it's something I'm very proud of. I'm not I'm genuinely, alhamdulillah, quite satisfied in myself. It was a real kind of shock to go to the park and sort of see all these couples and families and all of these things and be shit. And I think it's because I'm a household of one. And it's, usually I'm very social and I see my friends and I see my family and I like, all of these things. And you don't really feel that absence because you fill your time however you want. But when you sort of don't have that choice, I think that's when it's a lot more difficult. And really for me, I would just love a hug. I just want a hug and I'll be fine. No, I'm so curious of how everyone's coping with things at the moment. Like, I feel like it's really just put such a microscope on all of our lives in a way. It's a lot to deal with. And I think that's actually one of the really nice things that's come out of it is I feel like in a way we're sort of all connecting on so much more of a human level. And I've noticed even like going on dating apps, for example, or whatever, whenever I'm like bothered to do that, I'm finding that even the sort of conversations that I'm having with people are so much more real. It's so much more about like genuine things. Like, how are you? Like, how actually are you?
I mean, for me, like, because my family's around, but when you strip off all the social obligations, no friends, no family, like you said, I just have been like not forced to work, but working has come easier. Like, I have to be productive, and I'm actually pursuing a lot of passion projects as well. Like this podcast launched, and just working on so many things. So I totally like, I finished your book in a day. Like, I would never be able to do anything like that if this was like a normal, like if you add in driving back and forth or running errands or seeing friends. So I've just been reading a lot, and I'm just like, it feels like a staycation. But sometimes it feels like a staycation gone wrong. It's like I need to change it up. But it's been really like, I mean, I'm quite enjoying it.
It's a weird one, I think. I think that we do sort of get in, especially now, where we're not in the sort of panic of it as much anymore. You sort of, not forget, but you're just like, okay, I'm just at home. And actually the other week it was weird because I was very much in that where I was like, okay, maybe I can just like be a bit more chill with myself. And like, maybe I'll go and like give my mom a hug, And then an ambulance pulled up outside my building and parked outside my building, and I had to let them in, and because no one was buzzing them in or whatever. And that really kind of hit home for me, like, yeah, we're at home because people are dying. Like, this is a real thing. Like, the ambulance is literally inside my building right now. So that was kind of, like a reminder. And I think that there was this quote something I read it towards the beginning of this whole situation. And it basically said, if we come out of this feeling like we've overreacted, then thank God, then that means that our overreaction worked.
Okay, so I want to segue into the book because, by the way, I have to tell you, so I read this really quickly and then I shared this with some of my friends and family. I bought 2 copies to my sister-in-law and to a friend. And it was crazy that my bookshop down the road like sold it. So I live in this community that has like little cafes, but also this one bookstore.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
It's so cool. It had 4 copies and I was like on Amazon, and my colleague was like, I think we can order it from her website. And then I was like, they have 3 copies. So it was just perfect. But I actually I bookmarked like so many, like I think 60 pages. And I was like, telling my husband, can I read this to you? Because I can't possibly talk to Ali about 60 pages worth of quotes. So we narrowed it down to like 20. Like he was like, don't talk about that. That's actually interesting. Like focus on that, So anyways, I got like so many people engaged in this process for this interview. So I'm really excited to get...
I'm so happy to hear that, honestly. What I wanted to do with the book was just like have these conversations and kind of facilitate these conversations. So that's happening really just makes my day.
Even for him, I think it was interesting to have this discussion with me because I was like, this is so me. Like, this is like us, And it was interesting to hear his point of view just from a male perspective. Like half the time he was like, I never thought of that. That's interesting. Is that how you feel? So it was so interesting to even have that conversation with him and kind of discuss those insights. So going back to the book, so why did you decide to write about this specific topic, and why did you want to write a book to begin with?
I feel like for me, honestly, it was, I've been a journalist for a number of years. So I've always kind of been a writer. It was always for me, a way to kind of figure out how I feel about things. Like, all of that kind of stuff. So it was very embedded in me to sort of work through my life like that. And yeah, I've just always been a writer. So I think as a journalist, for most of my career as a journalist, I never sort of engaged with issues of like being Middle Eastern, like none of these things. I sort of felt like, well, it's interesting because I feel like I almost had imposter syndrome for a long time, kind of feeling like, oh, well, I'm not really Middle Eastern, so I shouldn't talk about these things because like, it doesn't count or whatever. And then I think that as I kind of got a bit older and sort of felt, got a lot more confident as well with sort of my voice and my ability to sort of say what I wanted to say and all of that. And at the same time, sort of increasingly started reading and, just being part of the world and realizing how little there was for us as Middle Eastern women, like just how many negative stereotypes there are and really reductive ideas of what it's supposed to mean to be a Middle Eastern woman. And I felt like I just felt like it was very important to sort of contribute to the conversation and share my life experiences, especially because, I come from a very like liberal, super chilled family. So I was kind of like, well, I'm allowed to say this, I'm allowed to talk about sex. I'm allowed, like, they're not going to be so shocked. And I think that sort of really gave me the push to do it because I was like, well, if I'm waiting for someone else who's also a journalist and allowed to talk about these things and, then why, I might as well just do it myself kind of thing. So I think that was really the drive. And then it kind of molded and became what it is. But that was the initial sort of root idea was, how about me?
Why not me?
Yeah.
So how did you choose the title? It's quite a mouthful. Like even when I was recording your intro before we started and I'm like, the greater freedom, life as a Middle Eastern woman outside, like it's quite a long title.
Well, the title is the greater freedom, obviously. And then the subtitle is life as a Middle Eastern woman outside the stereotypes. And all nonfiction books have a title and a subtitle. Okay, it's just to kind of give a bit more of an idea, I guess, about what the book's about, because you wouldn't really understand with just the greater freedom, would you?
Yeah. And did anybody help you with the title, or was it like, how long did it take you to be like, that's it, that's the title that I want to use?
So how it works with nonfiction, especially, is that you basically I wrote the book after I had a publishing deal. So all of this in terms of like the title and all of that was a back and forth conversation with my publishers, which is Amazon Publishing. And I was one of their first nonfiction authors and the first in the UK, actually. So it was a really cool experience to get to work with them because it was new for both of us. So they were also very open to kind of, hearing my ideas, and they didn't already have like a very set way of how they did things and just wanted me to slot in. So that was quite cool. It felt quite collaborative. And actually the greater freedom, at first I had loads of titles at first. Like I think my first one that I pitched the idea of the book with was Both and Neither. And Amazon were basically like, well, that's so hard to search because both and neither are words that are in so many things. So it's quite interesting that obviously because they're like a digital company, that was something that they thought about. And then we kind of just tried to come up with some more ideas. And actually the initial editor who commissioned the book from me, they spent like the whole night reading over my proposal. And the greater freedom was just like part of a sentence that I had written. And he was like, oh, that's kind of what the book's about, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, that is actually kind of what the book's about.
Thank you very much.
And then it stuck. Yeah.
It's a fantastic title. And I think like it really kind of resonates with the actual Middle Eastern woman who doesn't fit the stereotype. Like it is about just being free and being free to be who you are, which is like something that it takes so long for us to figure out that we need to get there. So I think it really kind of captures you, and it's a beautiful design, like cover design. So I know it's a bit like we're sidetracking a little bit, but where did you come up with the design? Because it's very Instagrammable.
That's so funny. Well, you know what? This is great because no one usually asks me these questions. So I'm like, fantastic. Again, it was a collaboration with my publishers. So they initially sent over a few designs, and this was actually kind of a mixture of two. So the mosaic border that's around it was a sort of a whole other cover, which was all like that. And then there was another one, which was all the kind of zigzag crosses that are in the middle. And I was like, oh, I think it could be quite cool if we like put the border around that one and change some of the colors and stuff. And then it kind of came from that, basically. So it was like a meshing of two different covers that they had sent me.
This podcast is brought to you by O'Brien Hill. O'Brien Hill is a leading communications agency focusing on public relations, event management, and marketing. It's made up of a fantastic group of creatives in the design and PR fields. The agency first came to life in 2010 as my brainchild. Our creative consulting services were in demand in the UK after our online publication Sketchbook became an overnight success. Much like a proud mama, our agency's namesake is attributed to the place of its inception, Notting Hill. It's now 10 years later and we're one of the leading communication agencies in town, and we as a team are incredibly proud to be working on this very podcast behind the scenes. Check us out on www.obrionhill.com. And how did your publishers find you? Or did you reach out to, did you find your agent who connected with your publisher? What was the process like?
So I basically decided that I wanted to write this book. So that was the first step. And then I kind of put together a proposal. So basically how it works is most publishing houses will not accept an unsolicited manuscript, which means that it needs to come from an agent. And that's, I guess, just like a way to sort of filter and at least, someone's vouched for it before it's landed in my inbox, right? So like maybe it's worth me looking at, I suppose, is the sort of thought process. So I put together a bit of a proposal, and that was something that I wanted, that was something that I needed to shop around to agents with, basically. So I kind of put together this whole, there was a lot of just to like shorten the story. I put together this whole kind of spreadsheet of all the different agents in the UK. And to do that, I went on different agency websites. And then on there, it will have like, this is, this agent, this is the kind of stuff that they like to work on. These are the books that they've, worked on so far, whatever, and their kind of email address and their social media handles and all of that. And then I would kind of just like follow them all, see what kind of, see what they're saying. Like, do I like your vibe? Like, would you maybe like my book? That kind of stuff. And then I just emailed them. I emailed them all and I was like, hey, I have this idea basically. And this is kind of a brief sort of proposal of what I imagine it will look like. And then there's, obviously most of them will never answer you because that's just how it works. Some of them you'll have to chase, some of them, all of that kind of drama. And then some of them, obviously won't get it at all. So there were a few of them who, didn't understand. They were like, oh, but don't you want to write about like, veiled women? And I was like, that's super important. And actually someone else should do that. But like, this is not that, So, there's a lot like, do you want to write about this? Or there was one who was like, why don't you just remove yourself and just have all the facts? And then someone else was like, why don't you remove all the facts and like just have you? And I felt like it was really important for it to be a mixture of memoir and cultural commentary, just to sort of feel like, there's a face that you're kind of following the story along, you're engaging with someone, but actually these are facts that sort of support all the life experiences essentially. So that kind of went on for a bit. And then I Imogen, my agent that I've signed with, she was amazing. She really got it. And she was so great, even in terms of like reminding me. So she really helped me improve the proposal. And she'd be like, this is what you meant here. She'd kind of remind me when I'd forget, because you just get so embroiled in it that you almost need someone to be like, no, just calm down. Like, this is what you want to say. So we did that together. And then she basically submitted it to, I think it was 27 different publishers. And then again, some get it, some don't, some blah, 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 da, da, da. And then Amazon offered me the best deal. And I felt like it was out worldwide, which was amazing because usually that's not the case. And yeah, so they were great. And then I signed with them and then I wrote the book.
Awesome. So did you get an advance?
Yeah. So you get an advance, which is not really quite enough to, live and survive. But
I'm always excited. Did you get your advance?
I'm like, I'm a millionaire. No. So yeah, so you get your advance, you write the book, and then you pay. Well, all the book sales then go back to paying off the advance. And then once you're done with that, then you start getting paid.
Oh no, that no one ever tells you that when you read about stuff like this or see it in
It's
movies.
the same with music, like record labels, like everything. It's almost like, well, they're not really giving you free money, I suppose. It's like a investment, like we're investing in you. Here's some money so that you can go do what you do and then give it back to us, basically.
So thank you for sharing that story. I mean, no one really likes to talk about the business of things, and I'm obsessed with like how things are done and why they're done, and I love learning. So I just think it's so interesting to see that part of the actual process of the book and how this book was made. So congratulations. I mean, what an achievement. Whether the advance, like it doesn't matter what it is, it's still like an incredible validation to have a publisher and an agent get behind you. And I know like working with an agent, they do spend time with you. They do develop that relationship with you. So I do.
No, and even in terms of the publisher, like it was such a great experience. They got Arzu Tahsin, who is an amazing editor who actually worked on I Am Malala, and she did Headscarves and Hymens as well. She was my editor on The Greater Freedom. So it was just such a cool experience to get to work with her. The book would not be, a lot of people are like, oh, like, what do you think of like self-publishing? And, everyone has their own route and does what's best for them. But for me, it felt very important to sort of, I personally wouldn't self-publish because you'd miss out on all of that, the collaborative process of the title, of the cover, of the book itself.
So in terms of the process of writing the book, like I'm obsessed with writers in general, just like, again, not just the business side, but also like the commitment to writing this piece of work and the revising and going back and forth. And there are writers who, work in the morning and they have a set routine. And some people like Julia Cameron is like, I write like I'm having an affair, just like 10 minutes here and 15 minutes there. I just sneak it in throughout my day. And
oh my God, I love that. That's so funny.
It's so good because I mean, I always thought that writing was like a thing where you would have to slot that in and it's so romantic and magical and you'd have this beautiful view and that perfect cup of coffee and then you put all these obstacles in front of you. But then when I read The Artist's Way and it's like, you just need 5 minutes or 10 minutes and sometimes that's enough and that's a good piece of work done for the day. So what was your process like during the 1 or 2 year period for you to kind of commit to this book? And did you spend a lot more time writing or revising?
It was about 2 years. And I think that I realized that I'm just a really extreme person, basically. So it's funny because when you were saying that you had a bit of a teaser of like Corona self-quarantine last year, I had a bit of Corona teaser self-quarantine when I was writing my book, for sure. And it was funny because I had actually just moved into the place where I live now. And there was like hardly any furniture in it because it just hadn't arrived yet. And I just had like my desk and my bed. And I would just be like, either at my desk or on my bed. And I was just wrote the whole time. And I think that, for me, it felt I had to do it that way because there was so many things that I was grappling with. And, you've read the book, so like I'm so much like, I really go so deep into my own life. Like when I was 5, like, why does this feel like that? So it was very, I think I needed to very much immerse myself in it. And I actually found what was more difficult for me was removing myself and like having a break or like going down and like seeing my family or whatever. I found it really difficult to step away because even when I'd be sitting with them, I'd be like, I have to go home. Like I'm having new thoughts that I'm going to have to write down or I'm going to lose them.
Did you have days where you struggled to find the words or did it kind of stream out?
I think there's an amazing book by Stephen King called On Writing.
Yeah, I read that. It's good.
Yeah, there's a part where he talks about, inspiration will come, but it has to find you working. And I think that because I just had this routine and like even on the days where, maybe I did sometimes on days where I would be a bit like, oh God, I don't know what to say, or where I would struggle a bit more, I would do more research or I would, I wouldn't kind of break it. I would just keep writing and then I would even just write in capitals, fill this in here, and like just keep going kind of thing. So is whatever I could write, I would put that. And then, yeah, you go and you slot back in. And again, I think it was Stephen King who said writing is rewriting. I think the beginning I was really nervous. And then a friend of mine, Laura Jane Williams, who's written a number of books, basically just said to me, what you need to do is just allow yourself to have a shit first draft. And like, don't be obsessed and like overthink it. And every single word, you're like so precious with it. Just write and then read it over, rewrite and edit and da-da-da. And like the book has seen like 6 million different versions. Like it's changed so many times. And I think it was just sort of not being too precious about it and just kind of, yeah, just powering through, I think, in a way.
Okay, so just life as a writer, what's that like? And especially as a freelance journalist?
I've always pretty much been freelance. Actually, one of my first jobs was I got an internship at Grazia magazine, which was super cool. It was like my favorite magazine at the time. And I remember I went to an event that the digital editor was speaking at, and I kind of went up to her after and I was like, I love Grazia. And I tweeted her and, you know, all of the stuff. And then she's like, actually, we've got an internship starting next week if you'd like to do it. And I was like, yeah. And it was such an interesting experience for me because, it was very early in my career and I was still kind of trying to figure out what I like, what I want to write about. And that sort of gave me a real opportunity to try different things. I started to do a lot more fashion. I started to, you know, write about a lot of different things, which opened my horizons. And then at the same time, it was when social media was starting to really become a thing. So Instagram had like recently launched, like, sounds like I'm really old when I say this stuff, but I'm like, that wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, it was 2009, I think, 2008.
Yeah, it's like, you know, yesterday.
Just 10 years ago.
So I was kind of in the middle of this and I'd get sent on all these press trips. And it was so interesting because, you know, there's me with the journalists and then there's all these influencers who are starting to become a thing, who are getting paid to come on these trips. And we're obviously not. And they're, you know, taking all these pictures and blah, blah. And I've always been, again, very active on whatever social media existed, even when I was, you know, much younger, when it was other things, I was there already. So I think that felt, I kind of very early on, I think, sort of towed the line of like, you know, being a journalist and telling these stories, but then also sharing my work on social media and kind of posting pictures of myself and, you know, engaging with people and stuff. So that I think was super, super helpful just for the remainder of, you know, my life, basically, was to kind of, in a way, a lesson in how to market your work, which I think is actually very important as a freelance journalist, because visibility is, you know, a lot, because, you know, you're sending out pitches. A lot of it is you generating the work for yourself. And I think that the more, sounds a bit weird, but like the more like recognizable, I suppose, your name is, the more likely the editor is even going to open your email. So even small things like, you know, often, and it sounds like calculated, but it's not. I think it's just to do it in like an authentic way and not be like weird about it. But like, you know, finding out who editors are and like following them online and engaging with them organically about the kind of stuff that they talk about, that will potentially make it more likely that they're going to open your email. You know, stuff like that. Or even, yeah, just knowing how to then source people to interview from social media. Like I wrote my whole book like that, right? Well, a lot of the book like that. So stuff like that, I think, was really, really helpful. And it really taught me, I think, to kind of just go after what you want. And I think that also gave me a bit of a thick skin for when I was then pitching the book and stuff, as I was already used to rejection. I'm already used to people like not answering my emails and stuff. And I think that a lot of the time, you know, not to say that it's easy or like an enjoyable thing when you're like, oh God, chasing again, like it feels cringe forever, I think. But at the same time, you sort of start to realize, I think, that it's not anything personal. It's just like they're busy, or, you know, it wasn't quite right for them or whatever. And I think starting to realize that and really kind of absorb that is very important in terms of kind of the perseverance that you have to keep going.
So with your podcast and with your newsletter, what is the intention behind both?
The newsletter in particular sort of came because I just received so many amazing messages because of like off the back of my book. I get just messages every single day on Instagram from mostly young Middle Eastern women around the world, kind of being like, oh my God, I really related to this. I resonated with that, and sort of sharing their own experiences in my inbox, kind of just being like, this is how much I get it too. And that's so lovely. Like, I feel like that's just such a powerful feeling, to be able to feel like someone relates to what you're saying, and vice versa. You know, when you're reading something and you're like, oh my God, that's how I feel. That is the most life affirming feeling, you know, it really, really makes a difference. And so I think I really just kind of wanted to try and find a way to sort of share that publicly, and kind of do it in a way that everyone can kind of join this community and share their own stories, because everyone's story is very important and very valid. And actually, it was interesting because when it's only 7 weeks old, but when I was reaching out to a few of my friends at the beginning, so like, can you contribute something? Like, I was really scared that no one would submit. And actually, it's great because loads of people are, and I'm totally open to submission. So anyone listening, please, like, I really just want all sorts of different stories. But I was saying to one of my best friends, like, oh, could you write something? And she was like, yeah, I can. But like, it's not going to be like life changing or anything. And I was like, no, dude, it actually is, because literally someone just saying the truth and just being honest and just really genuinely sharing their experience, for someone reading that who feels the same, that actually is life-changing. A lot of the time we do sort of need that validation. And what was really interesting is I've been doing a lot of reading recently around the feminist liberation movement, in particular in the US, because I suppose that's where we have most, information. But it was so interesting because I can't remember where it was that I read this now, but they were basically saying how in the 1970s with the second wave and, when it started to really become a thing, part of how it spread in the way that it did was that all these women sort of started to come together and share their experiences. And they started to realize, oh, well, this is not just me. This is like a united experience that we're all facing. So it's not my personal problem. This is like a systemic, much bigger issue. And, let's then band together and maybe do something about it. You don't sort of feel like, oh, secluded and this is just me and no one else feels like this and maybe I'm crazy, You're like, oh, okay, this is a big thing. We all agree, like, yalla, maybe we can do something about it then. So I think that's really what I wanted to do, is sort of just to empower ourselves and each other to be ourselves ultimately, and not even saying that there's like a certain way that there's a right and a wrong way to be. Literally just be whoever you are and know that that's okay, basically. So I think that was really the intention behind the newsletter, is just to build this community, share our stories, embolden ourselves and each other with the truth. And then with the podcast, Nasri and I have been talking about it again for ages. And I think we just wanted a place, like, there's podcasts I think I just love podcasts. There's so many great ones. Like, it's becoming ever more sort of a medium that we engage with. And I think that it just felt like it felt important to sort of have, Middle Eastern, like, creative voices as well contributing on that platform, and just sort of see what comes from that, and just sort of have, like, we kind of wanted to just be like a chat. We're going to have like our creative friends join us, talk about, what's up, like, how are you? What are you reading? What are you watching?
What are some of your favorite podcasts before we segue into the book?
I love The High Low. It's 2 British journalists, Pandora Sykes and Dolly Alderton. And then my friends at Yalla Let's Talk just released Third Culture Talks, and that's so much fun. It's three 2 girls and a guy, and they're all Middle Eastern, and they're all like third culture kids, so they've all like lived in all these different places, and they basically just talk about, like, their latest episode. They spoke about like strict parents growing up, and like, what were your parents like, and what time was your curfew, and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun to listen to.
I love the Girl Boss series by Sophia Amouro. I think that's good. Obviously, Oprah Super Soul Sunday. So just when you're having a terrible day, just like listening to her voice, it's like Mother Teresa. So she's a wonderful compass. I like Goop. I think some of their episodes are really interesting about stress and anxiety and just different ways of medicine and chemistry. And I love going on there and just discovering something completely new that's out of my comfort zone. And I like Nof Hakim. I'm trying to improve my Arabic. I try to listen to a few Arabic podcasts just so I can, just listen to Arabic and I hope it can help me speak it. But I think Nof Hakim is nice. They're about 10 or 15 minutes, but they talk about different subjects like digital minimalism or just social media and just things that we do that are just, I think, bad habits. And how do we, like, she has this really nice episode about if you do multiple things, why do they say that you are like, the jack of all trades, but a master of none? But is that really true? Because I have different passions and I have different projects that I'm doing. So it doesn't mean that I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It just means that I go where I'm curious. So that was a really nice, like, half an hour episode, which is nice and light. Okay. Are you ready? What I'll do is, I've never done this before, but I think I'll probably read the quote out so there's context for the listener. And then maybe we can discuss it. We don't have to discuss everything for too long. Maybe just, there's something that I'd want to share and we can talk about it. And then, like, let's see how...
Well, I'd love to know what your takeaways are from the quotes as well.
Ooh, okay. Well, I'm ready. So page 16... So there is a section on identity, and I'm just going to read the quote. The media helps to inform who and what we see as important. It defines the visible options for what the world sees as possible. It affects everything, like who we think can be a politician, who is considered beautiful or smart or worthy, who belongs and who is other, who can be seen to live happy, healthy, normal lives. What I liked about this quote was that, like, I really struggled to find Arab role models, period. Like, everywhere I looked, people were complaining about where they worked. They hated their corporate jobs. Like, we live in an area where the financial sector really boomed. So there was this huge wave of people who went into banking. And for the longest time, Bahrain positioned themselves as a banking sector. So all I heard were these people just like hating their work. So I never met people until I went to uni that loved what they were doing. So I thought that was that part really spoke to me, because we're like hunting. We look for women who we can relate to, who are inspiring. And we put on this huge event called the Woman Power Summit like 2 years ago. So we did it for 2 years. And we brought all these people from Europe to speak, but like the people that resonated with the audience, so we had 4,000 people at the event, was, the first event we had 2,000 people, the second event we had 2,000, but the first event, 2,000 people, they connected with this woman who was like a scientist from the UAE, Dr. Maryam Muttar. Like, people were like, that was the best session. And I was like, oh, wow, all we're looking for is like models that we can connect to and relate to.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for us to be able to see that and feel like, oh, these are things that I even might be able to do. I think there's so many jobs and so many things that we can enter that we don't even think of because we've never seen that it's possible. So I think on that front, it's super important. And then I think also for the wider world as well, to be able to, to not have a very limited idea of what it's supposed to mean to be anything. Like, I think even now, honestly, I'm absolutely devastated at what's happening, with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, obviously, and like all of the stuff that's happening, because I think even in terms of that, there's such a limited image still that we have, or that we're given by the media about Black people. And so it's almost just like you don't really see the full nuance and kind of human and in everyone, because it's so like niche and kind of, we don't really get to see what real human life and color and, feeling and stuff is. And I think it's, very important to kind of be able to see that again for ourselves so that we can dream big, and then also for the world.
So page 20, in a highly gendered Arab culture, there's a profound and all-encompassing emphasis on being well put together, and a very specific version of what this might look like. Women in the region and its diaspora are often held to high standards. Straight hair on our heads and smooth, virtually hairless bodies. In addition, there's an expectation to be manicured and well-dressed, not to mention in good physical shape.
It's funny because we do sort of get so acclimatized to these expectations. So it's actually been quite freeing to be like, meh, I'm not going to do it.
And not just that, but like, I've always been ashamed of the hair on my body. Like, I remember traveling with my family, like in summer holidays, like going to Cyprus or going to wherever, like just on the beach. And I'd just be so embarrassed because I'd look and see all these people without any hair on their bodies. And even if I'd waxed or I'd be hairless, I'd still feel like there's a patch here or there's a patch that's growing. And it just was horrible. And it was really tough. And I think like just learning to embrace this stuff. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Like this is, and we tweeze and we pluck and we, like there's so much work that we do.
And it hurts.
It really hurts. It really hurts. And I think men have no idea like what we have to go through to like look like this.
My friend recently, I can't remember why, she had to wax her husband's like back or something. And I think she did like one strip and he was like, okay, that's enough. Like, I'm out. Like, count me out.
Like it's like patchy in places.
Yeah.
Okay, so page 67. Between the demands of our families and communities on the one hand and the wider society on the other, not being able to live a full life in either one or other realms or indeed between them. The pressure not to make mistakes, the feeling of being constantly watched, evaluated, molded and judged were exasperated by our roles as daughters or by her role as a daughter. The symbol of honor, the ultimate measure of whether our parents had successfully raised us despite and in spite of the England that surrounded us. So like this idea of like, I don't know, do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so that's a quote by Rami M.K. Ali in his book, Becoming Arab in London, which is a great book. And he basically, is talking about sort of the pressure that his sister in particular faced because she was a woman. And I think I really felt that growing up in London was this kind of idea of like, okay, cool. So this is what we as Arabs do and believe and stuff. And yeah, you're in England, you live here and British in a way, basically, but no, you're not. So it was kind of this pressure of sort of, you know, fitting in and like not being like fresh off the boat, but then at the same time, not losing your culture, whatever that means, right? And it's something I've been thinking about a lot, like what even is culture?
What even is that?
But it is this sort of idea that Eastern morals and Eastern beliefs are great and good and oh, great, amazing. And then Western beliefs are like horrible. And if you go out and you become Westernized, like, oh my God, Aib, and what's going to happen then? And this is a disaster. So kind of being in the pull and push of that, growing up in London was really weird. And I talk a lot in the book about how, you know, certain wants and behaviors and ways of being and stuff are attributed to being Eastern and other things are attributed to being Western. So it's almost like, oh, so if I have a boyfriend, then that means that I've abandoned my Arab heritage, which is obviously not the case, as anyone who lives in any Middle Eastern country would know that everyone's doing all sorts of shit there too. But I think it is this kind of belief, isn't it?
I mean, totally. And on top of that, like when I read that, it feels like, even for me, like I'm living two lives. So like there's this side of me that everyone sees, which is this person who tries to make no mistakes. And it's really hard to be vulnerable and authentic and real when you have to put on this face of like, I have my shit together and I'm organized and everything is perfect and you're smiling. And it's like, and then when you go home, there's like this whole other side to you, or when you're comfortable, when, you know, you're in this gated community, or when you're in houses with big walls, it's like you can really be who you are and you can talk the way you want to talk. So it's that duality, which I find so strange. And especially for women, because we're taught you can't do that and don't speak your mind and don't talk about politics. And then equally so, we have fathers or parents who are like investing in our education, for us to be financially independent, to find great jobs, but then don't speak your mind, don't make mistakes.
But it all comes back, doesn't it, to this idea of being marriageable, I think. And I feel like, you know, what was quite interesting is that a lot of the women that I spoke to in the book, they almost told me like, oh yeah, you know, my family always encouraged me to work hard and go to uni and get a job and stuff. But it was almost like, because that's what would also make me more marriageable, right? And then once I get married, I'm expected to like, kind of put that to the side and really make sure that I'm there for my husband and my potential kids, and hopefully they're all sons, and, like all of this kind of pressure that we have. And I think a lot of it, even how you look, everything, I think, actually comes back to you being good marriageable material.
So in Bahrain, like, again, I can only speak from my experience and my limited circle, but I don't feel it so much for you to be marriageable. Like, I think, I don't know if it's because we're an island, or if it's like we're so multicultural in Bahrain, or there is this immense weight for career, to be career driven. Almost everyone I know, it's like a 2-income household. Like, the woman works, the man works, and we all contribute. But I do feel like even when you're dating, like, you hide that stuff. Like, obviously you don't show it. So then you go back to like this mistakeless pressure, like no mistakes. I find it so funny because we are not meant to fail, and we're not meant to try and fail again and try again, and it's just wrong. So all the messaging to me has always been like, don't make mistakes, don't fail, whether it's personal or professional. And if you do, like, don't showcase that. So even when I'm trying to be vulnerable with this podcast, my parents are like, why did you mention this? Like, don't do that. Like, you don't need to like show the side of you. Like, you're fine. And I'm like, I am fine, but I want to be able to talk about these things. So it's like not the norm to just be you.
And I think that our parents and the sort of older generations also have this very, it's very private. You're not supposed to be vocal about these things. You're not supposed to talk about them publicly, even if you do feel them. Whereas I think that, our generation especially, and perhaps because of social media and all of these things as well, but I feel like we sort of really know and increasingly believe in the sort of power of sharing and being vulnerable. And I think that, I've seen this so many times. And I remember I went to Qatar, maybe like 10 years ago, like quite a while ago. And it was so interesting because I felt like what I noticed is that everyone was kind of doing things in case someone else cared. And obviously this happens everywhere, but I felt like it was a real, very good example of it. Because, so say we'd be, I was there with a couple of my girlfriends who, are belong to the culture and are quite well known. So have to sort of, in their families, so they kind of have to wear, the abaya and the whole thing, mostly just because people will know that they're, and naive that they're not and stuff. Anyway, so we'd kind of be, if we were going into a restaurant, obviously they have their abayas on, all of that. We'd go and then we'd find girls sitting in the restaurant. They'd have taken theirs off. They'd smoking a cigarette, whatever. My friends come in, they quickly put out their cigarette, look like mistakeless young women. And then say it's the other way around. Like, we're there first. My friends are sitting, smoking, whatever, chilling. Someone walks in. They're like, oh my God, quickly put out the cigarette, put it back, just in case they care. So it's almost like, okay, so you're doing it in case they care, and they're doing it in case you care, and neither of you actually care. So how long are we going to stay in this weird repetitive cycle of just pretending in case? And I think that that's almost, I think what I want to cut is like, okay, I'm going to be myself. If you guys want to join me, fantastic. If not, that's totally fine. But like, I'm not going to just keep like being in this weird cycle of pretending. I'm just not bothered.
This is a really nice transition to like page 74, because I love that so to me, this idea of being yourself, the permission to be yourself can come a lot from your parents, and especially your male guardian, right? So it goes from your father to then your husband. And this idea of sexuality or being comfortable being with the opposite sex. So here you talk about, so I'm just going to read a part of the book. So I wasn't meant to have sexual thoughts, but then I'd wear a top that was a little too tight and my family would make it such a big deal. It would make me ashamed to have those body parts. I would become really tomboyish and I wore baggy clothes because of how uncomfortable they made me feel, as though I'd done something so wrong for being feminine. And then there's the part about the uncles. So cover yourself, your uncles are in the room. At the time I thought it was a respect thing, but I was also amazed. Are you trying to tell me my uncles are going to look at me in a sexual way? With hindsight, I realized I often felt uncomfortable too as I grew older. It played out in all sorts of ways. It felt strange to have a male personal trainer or a male doctor, let alone how I felt in the company of boys who actually liked me. So in those three parts in this page, I resonated with every single part, especially at the bottom, because I actually, at some point, I signed up to a gym in London, a Virgin gym, and I had this PT, like I would get a free session, like I got a few free sessions with my membership, and I would just be so awkward, and I'd be babbling, and I just was so not myself. I was not comfortable, and he was just poor guy, like he was just trying to do his job, and I just felt so strange. So, and this idea of sexuality, forget sexuality, it's just being attracted to the opposite sex and just also being able to communicate those things. I'm quite lucky because my mom is like a friend, and I'm really the exception to the rule, because I know a lot of people don't have that, but my mom is like a friend, a big sister. So I always used to come to her and talk about boys or guys I want to date, so I'd go on, and she was very open about having these conversations with me. She always used to say, I'd rather you have these conversations with me than with your friends who might give you the wrong advice. So as long as my mother knew what I was up to, I always felt that I A, behaved responsibly, but B, I knew I had her trust, and it was okay to like date, and it wasn't a shameful thing. And I've seen women who, or even like young girls when I was younger, who've had very strict parents. So they were not able to transition into like having comfortable relationships with men. They're much happier being single and being alone, and all that stuff that comes with the relationships is too much of a headache for them. So they just are like, no, thank you. Or people who have very strict parents who don't talk about being attracted to somebody or just feeling sexual and just being okay with all those things. They go extremely the other way, and they're dating every, Tom, Dick, and Harry. They're just really open to like dating around. So it's like these two massive extremes because we just don't talk about these subjects.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the time, when we have really strict parents or we're really not allowed to do something, you actually just go in the complete opposite direction, like you were saying. And even in terms of, going out and stuff, I had a few friends. My parents were always really chill, even though my mom did have a lot of art, especially around like men and sex. And, she had some complexes that she loved to pass down to me, because I think that's the most thing that we sort of are policed and police each other with. But, even in terms of kind of going out and stuff, like some of my friends, they would just go absolutely bonkers whenever they were allowed to sort of be anywhere with alcohol or whatever. Whereas for me, for example, it was my parents drink, like it was my dad gave me sips of beer when I was a kid, like it was never a weird thing. So I was always a lot more sort of responsible, I think, with my choices. And I think that that's a big part of why it's so important, I think, to be able to have open conversations with your kids and with our parents and stuff, is essentially just so that we feel enabled to make better decisions, literally.
Better decisions, but also like to talk about the complexity of dating or being with an Arab man. And I love that in page 91, I laughed so much when I read this. So you write, if you are ignorant about sex, they say you're frigid and that you don't know what you're doing. If you're not ignorant, or if you show that you enjoy it, it can often be, where did you learn that from? It's like you can never win. It's like if you're too comfortable, you basically have had too much experience. If you're rigid, I just can't be with you and I will move on because you are just not flexible and you're not comfortable and it's not natural to you. So it's just hilarious, the amount of pressure for women to, and I think that's why a lot of women get married and then later on get divorced, because they discover a lot of these things much later on. And it takes, like, I know women who don't enjoy sex with their husbands, and I know women who have an appetite for it, and it's just like the comments they get from their husbands is just the weirdest thing. So when I read that, I got it. Like, it's like, can't win.
Well, I think it's so sad because men also obviously get sort of brainwashed to have these same things. So they also have this kind of idea that you're either, my wife, or you're like a whore in the street, basically, which I think is super unfair, because we are, again, like I wrote in the book, we're all nuanced human beings. Like, we are all allowed to be many things. But for women, we're like not. And I think that's it's just unfair, because we are all many, many things, and we should be allowed to be whoever we want at whatever given time.
podcast is brought to you by the Women Power Summit. The Women Power Summit is an annual event that hosts more than 2,000 guests to listen, learn, and network with more than 100 plus speakers and industry leaders. The summit creates space for growth, learning, discussion, and collaboration, with the means of creating a space where women can support each other, ask questions, be curious, and be inspired. Now I want to move on to marriage. Well, I guess we're starting the conversation about marriage because in page 117, you say, I passionately express the opinions I hold as truth. And then I posted another video saying my mom was no doubt going to call me any second, criticize me for expressing those opinions on a public forum, and saying that because I would now find it more difficult to find someone who would want to marry me. And again, all my life, I've been taught by my dad, like, don't talk about politics ever. Like, that's something that you don't bring up. Just focus on yourself and your education. It's a narrative that's carried on with my husband, like, focus on your business. And it's like, I feel that, and I tell this to my husband sometimes, like, there's two sides of me. So again, there's a side of me that is the working woman, and I'm super alpha. But when I'm with him, I become like, I switch gears, he becomes alpha, and I just completely have to tone it down. And I always complain to my mother, and she's like, you wanted an alpha and you wanted somebody super dominant. Again, I think he reminds me of, in a very weird way, of my dad. But anyways, that's a whole other set of issues. But I think that we're just taught to tone ourselves down as women. And I run my own company, and I've been to meetings where if I get worked up, people would be like, or men that I'd be sitting with, or my colleagues or whatever, they'd be like, you know, why are you so emotional? Like, don't get so upset. Like, I'm not upset. So it's just always, if you kind of turn the volume up as a woman, you are taught to take it easy, tone it down, bring it down a notch, like, stay in your lane, stay boxed in. So when I read that, I just totally like got it. And I think for a lot of the women that I interview as well, like, some of them are single and they're managing multi-million-dollar companies. And it's really hard for them to find a partner that is happy and comfortable with all of that package. So unless, I always say, if you're like, my advice to women who are like me, which could be very, by the way, just terrible advice, is just tone it down. Like, be who you are at work.
I refuse to do that.
I know. And I read that in the book. You're just like, I'm just, you know, I don't want to change gears. Like, I'll be who I am, and whoever.
No, and also I feel like then I'm almost doing myself, and sorry, like, no, you can do what you want.
No, it's fine. Like, no, I appreciate the different, yeah.
I feel like it's almost like a disservice then to the wider kind of gender, because then we're all going to have to do this forever, you know? Whereas it's almost like, wait, maybe we can be the change. And then men will also realize that they don't need a toned down woman in order to feel like a man. And it's almost just like this whole, I just can't. It gives me like a rash when I think about it.
So in my case, I mean, again, it's, you know, I don't want to dwell too much on it because I think everybody has a different experience, and I'm really like focusing on mine, which is very specific. But for me, it was like, I've always wanted to be a mother. I've always wanted to like have it all. Like, I wanted to have the business and just have the career, but also have like a thriving family life and to have a partner. And so, and maybe because I'm in service, so like I'm a service-based company, so like it's all about compromise and building these relationships and making things work. So it's a bad example, but if I'm working with a company and I'm like, this is the advertisement you should do, and they're like, that's not us, I'll compromise. I'm not going to be like, I'm walking out the door, you know, this is it, or I'm done. And some agencies are like that. They're like, this is it, or we're leaving. And I'm all about like, let's win-win. So I found what worked for me, but I think that it's hard because, I do feel that sometimes, and I do have these discussions with my husband, like, it is tough to keep it so toned down with you. But then I'm like, okay, well, this is only for a few hours, and then I can go and be myself and I can do whatever I want. Like, there's all these spaces for me to be who I am. So it is a challenge, like compromise.
So really interesting viewpoint, actually, what you said about, you know, if it was a work thing, would you compromise or would you like storm out, basically? And I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I have some friends who like don't, you know, their husbands are completely separate. I've never really even met them. And that's, you know, and I guess everyone, again, wants different things. Like, I guess everyone envisions their lives differently and is willing to do different things to have the life that they want. But for me, it gives me a rash.
It's such a debate. And I think every woman will probably have something different to bring to the table about the subject matter. But it's interesting to me because, I mean, I've been married. I've dated my husband for a few years. We've been married for a few years. And it's just like I chose him. So I also picked like somebody who was equally as challenging, who was alpha. Like I didn't also pick somebody who was like sometimes you'd find the balance where you'd find an alpha, you know, woman, and then she'd find a guy who's really chilled and who's like, just do your thing and I accept you. But I went out and I looked for somebody as hard-headed and stubborn. And I'm like, you're the one. This is it. We're going to find a way to make this work. And I think, but then my compromise is switching gears. But then I also am like, is that so bad? Like, cause with him, I have to be very feminine and soft, which is also a different side of me that I don't really do much. Cause I'm quite in control in all other aspects. So it's like, I don't know if compromising is always like a lose-win. Like some days it's a lose-win, some days it's a win-win. So I don't know.
I guess, yeah, whatever works for everyone, really. Again, everyone's going to want different things and be willing to do different things to get that. So
yeah. And I think I love the part. So then you go into the part where women don't compromise. So today's single women are regularly, so I'm quoting you, today's single women are regularly hailed as society's fastest growing demographic, wielding enormous power. So do you want to get into that a little bit? Like how did that even cross your mind to kind of explore the single Arab women or just to explore single women in general?
Well, I just feel like there's such a limited, again, idea of what it means to live a happy life, right? And that for Arab women especially, but really just for women in general and really just for humans in general, but especially women, we're supposed to get married. Like that's assumed that that's the only way that you're going to be happy. That's your life, right? Like what other life is there even almost? And I feel like that's super reductive because firstly, it also makes people settle for people that maybe they wouldn't want to be with, in fear of being alone, like as if being alone is this horrible disease. And I guess I just wanted to say that, no, that's not the case at all, basically.
A friend of mine once said, so he's like a life coach and a healer. He said like society gives the married women so much more weight, like puts her at the top of the food chain and then puts the single woman at the bottom. So it's just like, it's even our value system. So we view a single woman in a certain way versus a married woman.
Well, it's because men made the rules, right? So they decided that makes us more respectable, that a man has deemed us worthy and respectable. So we must be. And if a man has not selected us, then that means that we're shit, basically.
I love this. نقول عقبالك.
We say عقبالك.
عقبالك. احنا نقول عقبالك. We say something really similar. And yeah, it was like a swear word. Like for the longest time, I would go to parties and it's like, no, like I'm not a miskina. Like don't look at me like that. So I tried different tactics. So this again really made me laugh because this is something that we experience, but I've never seen it written in a book. So I thought that was awesome. And I just remember when people used to say that to me, like in the beginning, I'd be like, oh, thank you, or inshallah. And then I just hated it because it was so repetitive, especially when you're in your early 20s and you go to these...
Early 20s? Oh my God. You guys started earlier.
Oh, like, no, for me, it was early 20s, like as soon as I came back. But there was a wave for me where like you were, like everybody around me was getting married. Now it's kind of gone down. But I think there was a phase where I would go to like so many parties and that would be the one thing people would say and just look at you like you're so poor and, you know,
literally kills me.
Oh my God, it killed me. And so I started saying like, yalla la inshallah, yani yalla, find me somebody. So I would switch it and attack them and they'd be like, I'm like, انتوا ما تعرفون أحد, like, do you not know someone? Like, find me somebody, la? Like, I would just be like, and then
That's
they'd
so
be
funny.
like, and then they'd be like, la la, yani, we don't know anybody, la, inshallah. Like, you know, like they would be really like it went from being offensive, like they'd be on the offense to like being defensive. Like, we don't know anybody. I'm sorry. Like, you know, good luck to you. Like, so it just felt a bit, it was just like a really snide thing to say. at these events, and it really used to just...
It's awful. It's awful. I'm literally just like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
That's my response.
I remember there's a part in here somewhere that says, do you not wish like health and happiness for me? Like, don't, like your grandmother, I think, was like, I prayed for you. And you're like, health and happiness, or like, pray for that. Like, don't pray for a husband.
There's so many other things to pray for.
I want to wrap up with like financial independence and working women. So something I'm really passionate about that I really would love to actually do a whole episode about is I've met a lot of moms who like got married young, and we have conversations where they want to get back to work or they want to start working, and they find it's overwhelming. They find, it's really scary. And I think they're not looking to do it for the money. They want to work because I can feel that they want their own sense of self-worth. They want to feel like they've achieved something. And I think at some point, your kids go to school, then college, and then they have their own lives. And it's like, who are you if you're no longer like, you always are a mother, but who are you if you are not doing the day-to-day runnings of the household and taking care of the kids? So I don't know how to say that it's okay for women to try, but I've had these conversations with women like, oh, I'd love to work like you, or I would want to try something but I'm not getting the right support or emotional support, or just it looks too hard, and then they kind of go back and they shrink. So I see those moments where they want to kind of come out and try, and then it quickly evaporates. Like what would your message be to them, like why they should work or how they can start working again?
I think, again, it really is just about doing it. And I know that's such an annoying thing to say, but it's almost about, pushing away the sort of doubts and the fears and kind of just trying. And also we have to understand that like nothing is forever. If you don't like something, you can stop, right? Like it's never like, okay, khalas, this is it. And I think that, it really, I think for me, my mom never worked, and really seeing that has just made me so much want to work. And we have conversations about it all the time where now, my parents divorced like, I don't know, maybe 8-9 years ago, something like that. And she'll now be like, oh, well, I kind of wish that I could do something, but at this point it's too late. And obviously it's never too late, but she's not going to do it. But it's almost like, seeing that and I can see that she really wishes that she had, like, I think if there was anything maybe that she had done differently, it would be that. And I think it is just because it gives you such a sense of self. Your husband or whatever, if that's what it is, I feel like they respect you more, honestly. If you have something for yourself and you're doing your own thing, it's almost like, okay, you're my equal partner, not like someone waiting for me to come home from work and then you just want to chat to me and you have, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like you have your own thing that you love. And I think that the sort of empowerment that gives you is so important. And even like on the, more extreme spectrum, I quoted in the book that, most women who are in domestic abuse situations are unable to leave because they're not financially independent. And I think even in terms of that, like, you're able to make your decisions, say that's not so extreme, but even just in terms of being able to make decisions in your household and kind of being an equal sort of partner in a sense, I think just to have that confidence even in yourself, say it's nothing else, say it's that you get more confident just from what it is that you're spending your days doing, that's going to have a huge impact on the whole rest of your life as well. So I think that it's so multi-pronged, like the sort of, the sort of person that it makes you is great, and for lack of a better way of putting it.
So Alya, when I graduated, my dad really, like, I worked for 2 years in London, and then my dad really wanted me to work in a bank, and I went to art school. So I was like, no, I'm not going to a bank, but he was really insistent. So one of the things that I did was I didn't compromise, and I started my company right away, like zero money in my account. And I had to really build this organization from scratch, like barter deal to get a free office space. And the minute I was clear to him that I was going to get this done without his help, and he financially took a huge step back, like I think he gave me like $300-400 a month, just pocket money, which is so minimal. But I got my freedom back, because then I was pretty much free because I wasn't his responsibility anymore. Now, I really suffered for years watching my friends get paid well, travel, and I really just was so resentful, like internally, but I never showed him. And I just was like, the sooner I can get this company to start and for me to pay myself, the better. But I think because I chose to work for myself and not take funds from him, but like such a minuscule amount, but like he could no longer dictate what I could or could not do. And I see a lot of women now that want to, again, just in my circle, they want to be free because their parents are still they're in their mid-30s, their parents are still dictating what they can and cannot do because they're not financially independent. So I'm like, the first thing you need to do is just say, like, I want to do this, and just, I don't need anything from you. Like, I'm going to live under your roof because society says, and you say that I have to until I get married. But, some of them are not willing to compromise, and they're just like, it's too hard. So I totally got that chapter on when you become financially independent, you take the power back 100%. You can now travel, you can now make decisions.
Well, you're your own person, right? You're not like a dependent child on either your husband or your dad or some form of male figure who's gonna, maybe not remind you every day that they're giving you money, but they know. And
Okay,
when it's useful to sort of be like, oh, well, actually, that's my money. That's gonna come.
Yeah, and I think, like, I had so much respect for my mom because she also contributed to my education and my brothers. So like she and my dad were both like, and I felt the energy I felt the power shift when she started to contribute. Like, okay, like, he would just give her a lot more room to lead, which I don't think was there beforehand. So for sure, I think financial independence is the key to so much. And I love that chapter towards the end of the book. And before we wrap up, and you can go and have your meal or your dinner, are you working on a new book? Are you able to share something with us that's exciting about like your new project?
I'm very excited. And I just really what I want to do is just keep telling these stories in like, different mediums in different ways, and just keep like repping for myself essentially, and whoever resonates with that.
I'm so grateful you wrote this book. I'm grateful that you took 2 years from your life and really committed to it. And I cannot wait to see what you come up with next. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Woman Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Woman Power Podcast and Woman Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.